masterclass and your role as a teacher?
Masterclass is usually a group of young singers or younger singers who have applied somewhere to come together and work with a so-called master. Normally, the singers that apply or that attend these kind of master classes have just finished their studies, or they're in the end years of their studies. So they're usually young singers who have reached a certain kind of development where they know what they're doing, but they're looking for either new impulses or new inspiration even only, or they're hoping to find some new ways or new ideas. So my experience, that's the ideal situation. My experience, however, is in these master classes that often we do need to talk about some basic knowledge. As I said before, something like articulation, for example, is sometimes not really understood by many young singers. And my role as a teacher then is to listen to each and work with each singer individually, and to try to analyze their issues and their needs, and to try to pinpoint what is the best thing for this singer at this moment to help them progress. Yeah, and that's extremely individual. I often talk about breath support because that often at this age under 28, 29, 30 is usually an issue. As I said, because of my pet peeve is articulation, usually there's something about articulation that isn't working right, and I have to help with that. Sometimes I've worked with some singers where everything's working wonderfully already, and all we do is play around with new interpretive ideas, and that I love doing. That's my favorite kind of masterclass.
But I mean, you have an amazing career. You sang on huge stages with colleagues like Pavarotti himself. So what made you decide to teach young singers?
When I was 16, and I can't explain why, but when I was 16, I remember having visions. Now please don't think I'm a crazy person, or if I'm crazy, then I'm certainly good crazy, but I had visions of my future for some reason. And you're a little bit this type of person. You may have experienced this also. Okay. It's very difficult to explain why. I wasn't saying or thinking to myself, oh, what am I going to do when I'm 50 or 60? But some kind of inklings somehow came to me. And one of them was, oh, I want to teach someday. I had experienced some wonderful teachers up to that point, since I did start so young. And also master classes and various situations where I thought, it's such a wonderful thing. These people who are helping me and teaching me, they're so wonderful. I'd like to be one of them someday. So that's what made me want to teach. It goes way back to when I was 16.
With your tremendous experience, what's a common mistake you see young singers doing that you might have made as well?
One of the big mistakes is to try, not only to want to, but to actually try singing things that are too early for them. We are all attracted to the more mature repertoire. Secretly, every singer wants to be dramatic.
Yes.
And secretly, even if we don't admit it, everyone wants to be dramatic and interesting and very, have a particular kind of powerful, etc., etc. And that's not a bad thing to want to be, because that can give you some motivation. But at the same time, you have to be clever enough as a young singer to understand that that's what I want to be eventually someday, and I might need to have some time to get to that point where I can actually do that without damaging myself. And I also think it's important to mention that the dramatic voices, the really dramatic voices, do not think dramatically. They don't sing dramatically. They just are dramatic. They sing lyrically. Also, this word "lyric" is kind of like a nasty word for young singers. If I say to a young singer, "Oh, can you sing this more lyric?" It's like, I don't know who likes lyric. As I say, because everyone wants to be dramatic. But the dramatic voices just sing with their fresh lyric voices, lyrical feeling, but they're dramatic because they're dramatic voices.
Yes.
You understand? So that's a big mistake, not necessarily a mistake, but a little confusion maybe with young singers, that you really have to give yourself time, and the teacher should also help you have time to develop. On the other hand, I have to say about this, it's also not a good idea to hold a singer, only hold them back. Because what that will do, that will eventually frustrate them. They lose the motivation. It's like, well, if I can only sing this and I can only sing that, and it'll take me forever before I can do, I don't know, Tosca, or I can do Aida, or whatever. This kind of frustration is negative. So you have to find repertoire that is interesting and helps develop, just meets the needs of the singer, and maybe is just a slight bit above their capability so that they have a motivation to keep getting better and improving, etc. But it's a very, very sort of tricky kind of balance to keep, and very, very important. And that's the mark of a good teacher, who understands all of those qualities.
So what's the most valuable thing you've learned through singing opera?
This is an excellent question. It's a philosophical question. I like the question. But the most important thing that I have learned is that I am part of a long, long tradition, and that I connect to that tradition, and that I must learn from that tradition, and that I must keep this tradition alive, and that I must give this tradition further. That's the most important thing, really. It's a beautiful question, and it's a very, it's a spiritual idea, actually, because we're part of the history of all of these singers and classical singers and opera singers who went on before us, but we have our time, and then we try to assist the next generations that are coming. And it's a beautiful thought, and it's also reality.
Yes. Sorry, I lost my train
Yeah.
here. Which role do you relate to the most?
If I'm really honest, you may never speak to me again. No, seriously, there are many roles that I love singing and enjoyed portraying, and often roles that are different than oneself tend to be the most interesting. For example, I found sort of more, what we consider evil roles very interesting. I'm not such an evil person, but to play someone, who's really, very, wants to kill people and wants to have their revenge, you can sort of dig your teeth into that and really enjoy that kind of thing. But, that aside, I think I identified seriously the most with Salome from Richard Strauss. Now this is sort of a crazy role, as you know, difficult and also a little crazy. I didn't identify necessarily with her craziness, but the thing that makes her sort of go over the top in the end is that she's a young, obsessive person. And I could relate to this idea of being very obsessive, because I know I can also be obsessive, especially when I was younger. As I'm older now, I learned to deal with those kind of feelings. But I actually identified very much so with that role.
And could you tell us a funny moment that happened on stage that was a bit embarrassing?
Oh, there are many kind of anecdotes through so many years of singing. I think there's nothing that was really that funny. I mean, when you're on stage, you can't really react and say, oh my God, that's funny. You have to keep playing the role. But I've experienced, for example, colleagues seriously singing and losing their dentures, having the dentures pop out. One of my colleagues had his dentures pop out and he grabbed it. So that was kind of funny, but of course at the moment it wasn't so funny because I have to continue playing. Things that happened that sort of flustered me. One of my very first performances, I was singing The Barded Bride, and we had rehearsals, etc. And we came to the first performance, and I was used to having a chair around which this an entire scene was sort of taking place. And I came out on stage. From the very beginning, I'm going, uh-oh, the chair's not there. What am I? And it was my big debut in a big role, my first role, large role. And I'm thinking the whole time before this duet, what am I going to do? There's no chair. I'm getting all, while I'm singing, thinking all of these. And then I decided, I'm going to find a moment and I'm going to go off stage and grab a chair and bring it. And that's what I did. So I was a little flustered, but as I said, I continued, which we have to do, as we say, that the show must go on. And I seriously found a moment where I just ran off stage, ran right back, and I brought a chair with me. And don't ask me why I brought a chair. I mean, for the character, why the character brought the chair. But me, as a performer, I had to have the chair there because otherwise I didn't know how he would do this scene. Yeah.
And lastly, do you have a message for viewers who are discovering classical music?
Probably the most important thing, first thing, if you're just sort of beginning to be interested in classical singing and in opera, listen to old recordings. Inform yourself, first of all, just as fun, you know, just to hear someone like Maria Callas or someone like Rosa Poncel or Gili or Siepi or Shaliapin or whoever. Also different voices, not just one voice. And compare the different interpretations between these singers. You know, if you find someone singing the same aria, Una voce poco fa, for example, you know, listen to a few different singers. How does she do it? How does she do it? What's the difference? And then you can start understanding or appreciating the singer's work. I think listening to old recordings is extremely important. Also, if you become a singer or if you become only an audience member, because you appreciate and understand more of the art form, and it's a very good way to become informed and to gain some knowledge and love, actually, for this art form that we're working on.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our episode of today. Thanks again for agreeing to do this interview.
Thank you for having me, because it's a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to give some information to some young people, and maybe not only young people, who are interested.
And I will post links of her performances in the info box below where you can enjoy her amazing voice. And if you have more suggestions or questions, you can also comment. Don't forget to subscribe for more information about opera, and I will see you in the next interview.
Bye-bye.